Did you ever wonder what would happen if in the world of One Piece, Haki did not exist? As we know, Haki is one of the most important, if not the most important, form of power-up in One Piece. So, how would that shift the power dynamic? Which other form of power-ups would gain more importance? How would the actions of the characters be shifted? Would some of them go after devil fruits? And more importantly, which characters would die as a result of that change? Just a small warning, this new order of things would cause the world government to try and eradicate a certain race off the face of the earth, for the simple reason that they started getting too much control. And well, let's just say they don't like that. And which race is that? Well, stick around till the end and you'll find out. First of all, let's see the core world changes that would occur. All of armament, observation, and conqueror's Haki applications do not exist. No invisible armor, no future sight, no kingly pressure, which means the following: devil fruits, raw physical feats, weapons, technology, and racial traits become the only power systems, and as a result, become much more sought after. Here, an important question arises. If Haki does not exist, how would someone be able to counter the Logia intangibility? Well, it would be absolute, unless countered by one of these three ways. 1. Natural elemental weakness, such as when Luffy threw water on Crocodile to counter his sand-based devil fruit powers, or when Enel's electricity could not be conducted through Luffy's rubber body. 2. Sea Stone, that as known, counters the effect of all devil fruits. 3. Special abilities of certain devil fruits, like the case of Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi, that can directly suck and nullify devil fruit abilities. So because of these changes, not only devil fruits have much more weight in the power scaling, Logia are considered even more powerful, as it's much more difficult to counter. Power scaling becomes far more unbalanced and survival-based, while strategy, preparation, and environment matter more than willpower. Now, let's see how much weight each power-up holds. First of all, is devil fruits. They are the #1 most sought-after thing in One Piece. They're considered the ultimate power, and more specifically, Logia fruits dominate the world. After all, Logia users are nearly unkillable gods to non-devil fruit users. Paramecia awakenings and mythical zoans replace Haki as the endgame power, rather than advanced Haki. Oda reserves this all the way for the final stages of the anime. The black market for devil fruits, on the other hand, becomes much more valuable, as again, devil fruits hold much more power now. This causes all of the pirates, revolutionaries, and world government to hunt them down relentlessly. The group who holds the most and strongest devil fruits becomes the ultimate power in One Piece. But devil fruits are not the only thing that gains power as a result of Haki's absence. First and foremost, certain races gain immensely more control over the world of One Piece. For example, these races are considered generally superior, and for a fair reason at that. Lunarians have natural flames and enhanced durability, which is somewhat of a pseudo-Logia defense. They are nearly impossible to kill, and they become the most feared race alive. Giants, on the other hand, have raw size and strength that dominate battlefields. They are literally warfare monsters, and if you add devil fruit and enhanced giants into the equation, then they literally become walking disasters. Fishmen have absolute dominance underwater, which results in human pirates avoiding the sea even more. Skypians, on the other hand, have the dial technology, which somewhat replaces Haki utility, while their flight and ranged warfare keeps them much more relevant than in the original story. This also makes the world government go after these specific races to add into their ranks for positions of power within the world government. The same goes for influential pirates or just figures that are considered among the strongest beings in One Piece. They want to add this type of pirate to their ranks no matter the cost, as in the end, this might be the detail that makes the difference over who dominates over the other. For example, Lunarians were already considered incredibly powerful as it was. Now, without Haki, someone like King, for example, becomes among the strongest characters in One Piece, both a special race and an overpowered devil fruit. The same thing goes for Kuma. His race is the Buccaneer, while also having eaten the Paw Paw devil fruit. Here, I would also need to emphasize on Fishmen even more for a brief moment. In the original story, Fishmen were considered to be 10 times stronger than humans physically, and this gap further increases while underwater. The only thing someone could do while being underwater is to fight them with the use of Haki. But since Haki does not exist in this world, Fishmen have absolute dominion over all territories of water. Anyone trying to object their rule simply stands no chance against them. After all, devil fruit powers are nullified when the user is being submerged underwater. The only counter to Fishmen's absolute control? The next power form we'll analyze now. And what might that be? Technological advancements. Since Haki does not exist now, the world government spends tremendously more money in funding projects in order to control races with special attributes or certain devil fruit users. They already did that in the original story, but now it's even more obvious they invest a lot in devil fruit multiplication to gain the power of strong fruits. Devil fruit power nullification to render their opponents useless if they are indeed fruit users. Cloning in order to clone the attributes of certain strong races, and even more than that, enhance them with more devil fruit powers or other sorts of scientific modification. Vegapunk is now considered the single most important figure in the world government. With his advancements, the world government can win the war against anyone who opposes them. And well, that's not the only thing the world government does differently in this version of One Piece. They prioritize capturing and hoarding Logia fruits and mythical zoans. At the same time, they mass-produce sea stone weapons that become a top military strategic importance. The CP units shift from assassins to devil fruit retrieval squads, and a team that, when they encounter a special race, they capture them alive to bring them back to headquarters and have the world government scientists do all sorts of experiments on them to replicate their powers, or even clone them to have their clones work under their order. When it comes to Marines, the promotion system heavily favors devil fruit users exclusively. Non-devil fruit officers are relegated to support roles. Admirals remain Logia users, now even more untouchable. So what about strong Marines like Garp who are not devil fruit users? What happens to them? Well, we'll talk about these characters along with cases like Shanks and Roger in a little bit. For now, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep going. The Yonko crews now are basically the crews where the entirety of them is centered around being either a strong devil fruit user or part of a special race. The territories are now defined by who controls the strongest fruits, not reputation or Haki dominance like it used to be with Roger's or Shanks crews. So with all these things in mind, let's briefly talk about how different each One Piece character would behave in this version of One Piece. After all, their actions would need to be adjusted given this new order of things. First and foremost, Luffy and Shanks. This is something that requires a lot of thought for the following reason. If Shanks has at his power such a strong devil fruit, would he eat it or would he store it like he did in the original story? Well, things get quite complicated here for the following reason. If you recall, there's a very popular theory stating that Raftel repels and rejects devil fruit users. This is something that's been heavily foreshadowed, if you ask me, in a few different ways. But the two most obvious examples in my eyes are these. The first is that during the trip of the Roger crew towards the One Piece, the only devil fruit user in the crew, aka Buggy, suspiciously and all of a sudden becomes sick. The second clue is actually my favorite, and is the fact that Usopp's lies keep becoming true over and over again. We won't get into the full details of that, but we will stand on something he did say. His constant obsession with the I can't go in that island disease whenever he does not want to go somewhere. Well, many fans, including myself, believe that this is not just a casual joke or lie that Usopp uses, but rather a more subtle foreshadowing of Raftel that truly makes certain people sick when approaching it. So, if we assume this is true, then what? Well, first and foremost, given the new order of things, Roger would basically have to eat a devil fruit to stay relevant, right? Well, not quite. If we're to assume that Roger does become the Pirate King, then we'll have to assume he does not eat a devil fruit. Instead, he relies on extreme physical feats like inhuman strength, stamina, and pain tolerance. He would also be a master-level weapon combatant with top-notch charisma and leadership. He's still a once-in-a-generation physical anomaly, so even without Haki, Roger becomes the ultimate example of pure human potential. So having said all that, Shanks knows about the devil fruit weakness of devil fruits towards Raftel. So what would he do? Well, I believe that Shanks would eat a devil fruit, since his main goal is not really to become the Pirate King. He could have gone after it for years now and didn't. So we can probably assume that Shanks' goal is something else. With that in mind, Shanks and his crew would eat a devil fruit long before they encounter the Gomu no Mi or Luffy. So in essence, his actions as far as the Gomu Gomu no Mi goes would basically be the same, which would result in Luffy's eating the Gomu no Mi all over again in this version of One Piece as well. But which devil fruit would Shanks consume? Shanks would most likely consume a mythical zoan, specifically one tied to a god or guardian figure, something like a mythical zoan Hito Hito no Mi model Tyr. You see, Tyr is a one-handed Norse and Germanic god of war, law, justice, and honor, famous for sacrificing his hand to the monstrous wolf Fenrir as a pledge. So once again, this perfectly matches Shanks with him losing his arm. He's known for upholding oaths and fairness, and faces a fated death fighting the monstrous dog Garmer at Ragnarok. So what abilities would Shanks gain when eating this fruit? A massive boost of physical strength, durability, pain tolerance, near inhuman stamina, accelerated recovery, and self-healing during battle. Plus, Shanks' already elite physique is multiplied, not just enhanced. The fruit grows stronger the more Shanks sacrifices, similarly to Tyr, as based in Norse mythology. Taking serious injuries increases strength output, speed, reaction time, and the more that he bleeds, the more dangerous he becomes. This perfectly parallels his missing arm and his philosophy of betting everything on the future. So, let's take a look at how some of the other main characters would look in this timeline and whether they would eat any devil fruits, and if so, which ones. Let's go ahead and start with Luffy. Without Haki, Luffy's journey becomes significantly harder and far more grounded. He relies entirely on three things: his devil fruit mastery, his absurd endurance, and his creativity. The Gomu Gomu no Mi, later revealed to be a mythical zoan, becomes his lifeline. Awakening is no longer a bonus, but rather it's mandatory for survival. Luffy struggles immensely against Logia users throughout the story, often needing allies, environmental advantages, or sea stone tactics just to stay alive. This version of Luffy feels far less like a destined savior and far more like an underdog who just keeps going despite what everyone believes. A more interesting case would be that of Zoro. Zoro, without armament Haki, hits a hard ceiling early on when it comes to swordsmanship. After all, the main difference in One Piece when it comes to swordsmen is their skill in swords when combined with Haki and imbuing their swords with Haki. No matter how skilled he becomes, he simply cannot cut Logia users this time around, unless the new swords in this version of the story are specifically modified with sea stone metals, either fully or partially, to allow swordsmen to counter Logia users. This forces a massive shift in his path. Eventually, Zoro decides to consume a devil fruit, one that perfectly aligns with his identity. And which fruit will that be? He eats a zoan fruit that allows him to create an extra set of arms. Zoro originally thinks this zoan devil fruit is just a normal zoan, granting him the ability of an animal with more limbs. Nothing insane, right? However, hear this. In this timeline, this devil fruit is revealed to be a mythical zoan, the Hito Hito no Mi model Asura, a war deity. Once Zoro eats the fruit, he gains massive increases in muscle density, bone strength, and pain resistance. He gains extreme tolerance to blood loss, accelerated recovery after combat, and plus, Zoro can continue fighting through injuries that would kill normal humans. He would also gain certain demonic battle instincts tied to Asura's rage, heightened combat awareness while injured, which means the more damage Zoro takes, the faster he reacts and the harder he hits, which is a bit of a replacement to armament and observation Haki. When awakened, this fruit manifests his infamous six-armed, three-faced Asura form as a true transformation, massively boosting his strength, durability, and killing intent. When awakened in the late stages of the story, this form becomes absolutely monstrous, allowing Zoro to temporarily contend with even top-tier devil fruit users. His swordsmanship still matters, but now it is reinforced by supernatural physical traits rather than by Haki, which also allow him to hold more swords and unleash highly destructive attacks. How about Sanji now? Well, you see, Sanji's Germa modifications become his primary source of power. His speed, enhanced body, and fire-based attacks keep him relevant, but Logia users still hard counter him, unless again, he also reinforces himself with sea stone weapons, which in this version of the story, we can pretty much be certain that Germa 66 would most definitely add in their subjects. So the real question here is, would Sanji be stronger than Zoro in this version of One Piece? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Another member that would be somewhat different is Nami. If you didn't already know, in the early drafts of One Piece, this is what Nami used to look like, featuring this mechanical arm. Given this new state of things, this design of Nami would actually make it to the final cut, with this weapon also being reinforced with sea stone. Okay, so we've spoken about the Straw Hats, but how about their main rival, Blackbeard? Well, you see, Blackbeard becomes the undisputed apex predator of the seas. The Yami Yami no Mi is now the single most valuable devil fruit in existence, given its so massively broken abilities, as it's the only consistent counter to Logia intangibility. Without Haki users to challenge him, Blackbeard's ability to nullify and steal devil fruits makes him virtually unstoppable. He doesn't just rise to power, he bursts right through it, and is basically the undisputed favorite to become the new Pirate King. Entire crews collapse the moment he arrives. In this timeline, Blackbeard is not only a Yonko, but rather, he's the living manifestation of the devil fruit era itself. Something similar in terms of raw power would be Akainu as well. You see, Akainu becomes a walking apocalypse. His magma Logia has no defensive counter outside of sea stone or extreme environmental manipulation. He burns through battlefields uncontested, becoming the strongest marine in history. In a world without Haki, Akainu stands at the very top with little to no counters able to fight him on equal ground. And before we get to the actual plot of One Piece and how it would overall change, let's see the case of Garp, that should also eat a devil fruit if he wants to stay relevant in the world of One Piece. He uses no weapons, no swords, no special traits tied to a race. The only thing left for him now is his strength and battle IQ, which obviously are not nearly enough in this version of One Piece. So yeah, Garp would most definitely definitely eat a devil fruit. But which one? Metal fruit, a Logia-type devil fruit that allows Garp to turn himself into either liquid or solid metal, or parts of his body into metal. And what's the best part of this? Maybe there's even the potential of turning himself into sea stone, which would allow him to conquer all devil fruits with his punches, Logia or not. Something similar to how it was in the original story for Garp, but this time, instead of Haki, it's done through the power of his devil fruit. And with all these in mind, let's now see how the actual plot of One Piece would change. Because let me tell you, now this is where things start getting actually interesting. Let's start from the very beginning. The East Blue. In the East Blue, the world already feels far more dangerous. Logia users are not just rare legends anymore. They are walking calamities. People that ordinary people stand no chance against, unless they possess overpowered devil fruits themselves. Smoker, for example, is no longer just a persistent marine captain meant to chase Luffy around. He's a literal wall. Without Haki, Smoker becomes completely unbeatable at this stage of the story. Luffy cannot touch him. Zoro cannot cut him without better swords modified with sea stone. Sanji cannot kick him yet, since again, Sanji still does not have the Germa 66 modifications taking place. The Straw Hats do not escape Smoker through clever tricks, but rather they barely survive through sheer luck. This immediately changes the tone of the story, as well as the Grand Line no longer feeling the same. It feels like a death sentence for anyone who's not prepared. We're talking for a much greater degree of danger. Moving into the Alabasta Saga, the changes become even more drastic here. Check this. Crocodile is no longer just a powerful Shichibukai. He's an absolute tyrant, with not many people being able to even stand against him. Crocodile is nearly impossible to defeat. His Sand Logia makes him functionally untouchable unless his weakness is exploited perfectly. Thankfully, just like in the original story, Luffy defeats him all the same, as just like in the original story, Luffy did so without Haki as well. But this sends a very clear message to the Straw Hats. As the Straw Hats progress further, arcs like Skypiea change dramatically as well. And now, without Haki to counter him, becomes borderline invisible to anyone who is not Luffy. His lightning power turns him into a god, not just in title, but in practice. The arc becomes less about proving Enel wrong and more about exploiting the one singular exception to his power, rubber. Luffy, similarly to the original story, doesn't win because he's stronger. He wins because he's literally Enel's weakness. Enies Lobby is where things truly begin to diverge from the original timeline. CP9, a group once feared for their mastery of Rokushiki, combined with Haki-adjacent techniques, suddenly loses relevance. Martial arts alone are no longer enough in a devil fruit-dominated world. Instead, the world government begins deploying far more devil fruit users and sea stone-enhanced soldiers. By the time Marineford arrives, the world is already on the brink of collapse. Marineford in this timeline is not a war, but rather it's a massacre. Whitebeard, despite his overwhelming power, cannot reliably damage the admirals unless he equips himself with sea stone. His commanders, many of whom relied on Haki in the original story, are systematically wiped out by Logia users they cannot touch. Ace's death becomes unavoidable. There's no last-second save of Luffy like it happened in the original story. After all, Conqueror's Haki's not a thing here. Akainu, unchecked and unchallenged, becomes the symbol of absolute authority. And when Blackbeard arrives, well, things get even worse when Blackbeard steals Whitebeard's devil fruit all over again. Blackbeard does not retreat cautiously in this version of events. He takes Whitebeard's power openly, confidently, because no one present can stop him. The Yami Yami no Mi, combined with another top-tier devil fruit, makes him untouchable. The balance of the world does not shift after Marineford. Rather, a completely new order of things is established. Blackbeard is the absolute terror of the world. And the new world that follows? Well, it's no longer a place of ambition, but rather a place of extinction for anyone not strong enough or well-equipped enough with the right tools to counter powerful devil fruit abilities. Crews without devil fruit users die out almost instantly. Pure swordsmen vanish from history unless they wield sea stone. Humans without special races or enhancements become background characters in their own era. Fishmen dominate naval routes. Giants become living weapons of mass destruction, and Lunarians are hunted relentlessly, either exterminated or enslaved for experimentation. Kaido's crew becomes a nightmare army of Zoans. Big Mom's territory transforms into a devil fruit farm where power is harvested and redistributed. Shanks stands apart, not because he's the strongest, but because he represents balance in a world that no longer has any. And Blackbeard becomes the inevitable end of the devil fruit era. The man who consumes and steals devil fruits in a world where devil fruits are everything. Yeah, that's terrifying no matter how you see it. In the original story, the most major war we got was Marineford, but now there's a second major war that's even more brutal. And what's that gonna be? The special operation aiming to rid the world of Fishmen. As we mentioned, they hold too much power and basically have complete dominion over all seas. Their power in sea is absolute, and let's just say the world government does not like this one bit. So what do? They allocate tremendous budgets to research specific tools and weapons specifically tied to hunting down and hurting fishmen. They develop certain weapons that emit a certain frequency of sonic waves that can hurt only fishmen. After all, weapons like that do exist in the real world. Tools like that which hurt fish when they're close to them. In this version of One Piece, the world government develops similar weapons, but of a much larger scale, capable of dropping these weapons in the sea and exterminating entire regions of fishmen. And for anyone wondering if the world government would be capable of things like that, well, take a look at Ohara and tell me what you think. They would most definitely do that in order to gain control over the seas and the entire world in general. Now, what about the journey to Laugh Tale? This is where everything comes full circle. The theory that Laugh Tale rejects Devil Fruit users becomes the ultimate irony of this timeline. The world spent decades chasing Devil Fruits, worshipping them, killing for them, only to discover that the final destination, the truth of the world, cannot be reached by those who rely on them. So, who reaches Raftel in the end? Well, it's either gonna be Blackbeard, who's the heavy favorite, or Luffy, the outsider. But to be honest, in time, with his Devil Fruit Awakening, Zoro's Devil Fruit Awakening, Sanji's Germa abilities that are even more special here, Jinbei's abilities as a fishman, potentially the addition of a giant to their ranks as well, maybe even Loki, the Straw Hats slowly amass enough power to actually defeat Blackbeard. But no matter which of the two crews actually comes out on top, what happens in the end? After all, they are both crews with a lot of Devil Fruit users, including the two captains. Well, we do know for sure what Luffy would do if Luffy wins. You can be more than sure that Luffy's stubborn enough to keep going even if it kills him. He will reach Raftel, learn the secrets of the world, reach the One Piece, become the new Pirate King, and achieve his dreams. Even if in the process he gets a sickness that kills him shortly after, Luffy dies happy as a living legend who never backed down, even when he was always the underdog. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and click on this video next for more great anime content. Go on, check it out!